What's going on, salt junkies? Maverick here, back with another banger. And for this week's video, we're going to be talking about soft corals. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Maverick, and I work for a custom aquarium company by the name of Magnificent Aquariums, and we install, design, and maintain some of the most beautiful aquariums in homes and commercially throughout the country. Now, in last week's video, I taught you guys how to set up your very own saltwater reef tank. There's mine right there. So I thought, what wouldn't be a better second video than to talk about your very first soft corals. So today I'm going to be sharing with you my top 6 soft corals. So soft corals in my opinion are either loved or hated in the hobby. Some may sting your precious LPS or SPS corals, and others are colorless and boring. Well, today I'm going to solve this issue by talking about 6 soft corals I love and fit these certain criteria. So 1, they're beautiful. All these corals are eye-catching and add a unique look to your tank, and not just some brown piece of flesh sitting on a rock somewhere. 2, they're hardy. So these corals, for the most part, are hardy and can tolerate suboptimal water conditions to a certain extent and require less maintenance since, they don't really need as many minerals and they don't need to be as on point with your dosing and trace elements as LPS and SPS. And 3, movement. These corals at least have some type of movement that will add the sense of a living reef to your aquarium, and I think do amazing. So first off, what is a soft coral? Soft corals, or softies that do not have a calcium exoskeleton, they're just a bunch of polyps pretty much that band together to make one giant structure, which I find kind of trippy because when you think about it, a polyp is a multi-celled organism, and they're kind of making another multi-celled organism to make soft corals. But that's pretty much what a soft coral is. They don't have a exoskeleton, usually made out of calcium carbonate like an SPS and LPS corals. And I'm going to give you 6 soft corals, and the last 2 are going to be a little bit more difficult to keep, so stick around for those. Now, pretty much all of these corals are going to thrive in these water conditions. So a pH of 8 to 8.3, a temperature of 76 to 80 degrees, salinity of 1.024 to 1.026 or 7, and nitrates, you want them under 20 parts per million, calcium 250 to around 475, and 1200 to 1350 magnesium, along with 8 to 12 DKH in terms of alkalinity. I'm also going to be doing a little update on my Peninsula Waterbox 25, so stay tuned until then. So coming in at number 6 on our list, and these are in no particular order, these are all great options, just the last 2 are going to be a little bit more difficult for the reasons I'll say then. But at number 6 we got Zooanthids. So you know them, you love them, you need them, you crave them. Zoos are some of the most common and beloved soft corals in the industry. This is due to the nature that they are found in all places in the ocean. So cold water, warm water, shallow, deep, you name it, low flow, high flow. I mean, these corals are pretty much found everywhere in the Caribbean and other parts of the world. And they're really easy to keep because they can be placed just about anywhere in your aquarium. And, they are beautiful. They come in a variety of color morphs, and you can actually make a zoo garden. This is a pretty common thing that a lot of people do, is they'll get a rock and they'll put multiple zoo colonies on, and the colonies will grow until eventually they start competing, and then they'll usually stop growing until they grow outward. But they'll have a garden of Zooanthids that are different colors, and they are beautiful. Now, they're also inexpensive. This is another reason that they're beloved, because in the saltwater industry, I'm not going to lie, the prices for some torch corals, some golden torch corals, are pretty insane. They can get up to $200 for a head this big. So it can be pretty crazy. Now, they can secrete a toxin, but in my opinion, it's not very strong. It's not going to really kill anything. If you accidentally kill one of your zoos somehow, you might want to do a water change, but I really wouldn't worry about it too much. It's not going to kill your other, not going to kill your LPS or your other softies. Just, you want to trim them because they do grow fast, and they might compete with polyps and other things that grow in a similar nature. But just make sure you have them in control, and they should be a great coral if you're just starting out in the hobby. At number 5, I got Kenyan tree leathers. So they can be referred to as campanella and cauliflower corals, as well as Kenyan tree leathers. So the price tag for these is around $20 to $40 for a frag, with larger colonies being $80 to $150 I've seen them up to, depending on color and things like that, and size. These corals are amazing. They are a staple in many of our reef tanks because they're beautiful, they're hardy. It's basically a freaking tree underwater, and who doesn't want that? I mean, I've seen clownfish and other species of fish find refuge in them, and to me that's a really cool interaction. It's kind of like a bird in an Amazonian tree in the rainforest. I think it's just a really cool interaction. They thrive in new or established tanks, so don't worry about, putting your Kenyan tree leather into a new tank. They're gonna do great, they're gonna be fine. They also don't need to be target fed or anything like that, just like zoos. You can target feed them. It might help, it might make them grow a little bit faster, but they certainly don't need to. They rely primarily on their photosynthetic zooxanthellae. That is the symbiotic relationship they have with a bacteria that's in their skin. That is what makes corals photosynthetic. It's actually not the coral itself, it's another animal inside the coral called zooxanthellae. So you don't need to target feed them. There is also no need for an ugly frag plug. I really hate the look of frag plugs. I try to cut them and chop them as much as possible. And with the Kenyan tree leather, you could pretty much just stick it under a rock or stick it in a place where it's not gonna move for a day or two and watch as it attaches itself. So they can also thrive in par levels of 80 to 250. So you pretty much are not gonna go wrong anywhere you place this coral in your tank. Aim for moderate flow. They do like a little bit of flow, and plus you could see their branches moving, and just gives it more of that live reef look that I really love. And they don't sting anything in direct contact, but their mucus can and will bother some corals. You might see them close up, but as long as they're not actually sliced or cut or injured, they're not gonna kill anything. But if you do have a leather, just so everyone knows, if you try to frag it in the tank and you put it back in there, the toxins that it secretes is probably gonna kill your fish and coral. So if you wanna frag it, take it out of the tank, cut it, do your fragging, do your thing, and then put it back in the tank, throw some carbon in there, and you'll be great. But overall, they're a great addition to any reef tank, and I would highly suggest giving them a go. Okay, so number 4 on my list of best soft corals is green star polyps. So these are the only polyps on the list, and for a reason. I find them pretty easy to trim because other polyps that are more freestanding and just attached to rocks and kind of just pop up everywhere, they're really annoying to get rid of when they do start growing in other places in your tank, because they float through the water and pollinate somewhere else, kind of like plants. So when you see one on a rock that you placed in, a month later you might see one on a completely other rock that is 20 inches away from where you initially placed it, and that is super annoying. So green star polyps, in my experience, don't really do that. They kind of grow more on the base. They have like this purple soft shell almost that they hide in, and they grow along that, so I find it easy to peel them off if you do run into that problem, but I haven't seen it happen. But they have tons of advantages. They're beautiful. It kind of looks like moss, and what a lot of reefers do, and what I like to do with my clients' tanks, is I put them up to a rock that is close to the wall, or sometimes I actually just glue them on the wall. And it's a little tricky to glue them because they're soft, so just keep that in mind. But sometimes I'll just put them up to a rock that is close to the back of the tank, like the back background of a tank, and they'll grow up it, and it'll look like moss on a tree, and they actually move in a really interesting way, and they're really easy to care for. They like the parameters that I stated earlier. They like moderate flow, but placement is really the main thing you want to get down with these guys, because once you put them there, if you put them on a rock, it's a little tricky to get this stuff off, but it's not too bad. But just know that they're going to grow pretty quickly, and you might have to trim them down the road. You can also put them on the sand bed. They like most light par levels. You can put them on the sand bed and grow it like grass, and it looks like moving grass in wind, and that's pretty awesome to me. A lot of people also will put them on a rock and have like a moss rock patch look, so that's another option. But they're super awesome. They won't overtake LPS or SPS corals because you can trim them easily. They don't sting, they don't cause many problems. They are just beautiful, easy to care for, grow quickly, and they'll give you confidence if you're first starting out as a reefer, or if you're an experienced reefer, just to get that, you know, added live reef tank look that I really love. It's time to talk about mushrooms, and no, not the magical kind that you are thinking of. These are saltwater mushrooms. Please don't eat them. They will sting your mouth. So some mushrooms can be extremely invasive and sting other corals around them, such as the green hairy mushroom. These guys get pretty big, maybe around up to 5 inches in diameter, 5 or 6 inches in diameter, and they have larger tentacles that can actually sting and kill SPS coral, as well as other leather corals, carpet anemones, stuff like that. So avoid hairy mushrooms unless you're an experienced reefer, in my opinion. And they're hard to get rid of, and they grow super fast. So in this case, I'm going to recommend Rhodactis mushrooms, specifically orange Rhodactis mushroom, because I just love the orange look. I think they're beautiful under blue light. They're bright. They're amazing. They have this awesome texture pattern with their flesh. It kind of like bubbles up a little bit. It's beautiful. And yeah, they come in plenty of other colors like green, blue, red, pretty much you name it, they come in it. They can sting other corals, but it's not as much an issue as hairy mushrooms. They also grow much slower than a hairy mushroom. So the orange Rhodactis mushrooms are just mesmerizing to look at, and they don't need to be target fed, but of course they will appreciate that. So maybe you can get away with it once a month or so. That way when you add food, you don't have to spike your phosphates, spike your nitrates. It's a really good solid option, and they're pretty, they're beautiful. You can add a different color. Orange is a pretty difficult color to find in the hobby, so I find mushrooms are a really good way to get this. If you don't want mushrooms, go with some orange zoas. Another pretty easy thing to take care of, but from my experience, mushrooms like lower light and low to moderate flow, and they do move a little bit. You know, the bottom of them will kind of flap up, and the little hairy tentacles on the hairy mushrooms will flow, but the Rhodactis mushrooms, the flesh will kind of just jiggle back and forth. So it gives it that live look, and I love them. So it's time to talk about those two more advanced soft corals. So the one, it's kind of advanced, it's kind of not, but weeping willow, toadstool leather. It looks like a tree blowing in the wind. It has really long tentacles, almost like a torch coral, but it has, obviously it has no calcium carbonate exoskeleton, so it's not as difficult to keep as a torch, and you won't spend $250 on a single head, or $100 on a non-gold torch hammerhead. So it's a pretty good option if you don't want to spend all of your money on torch corals, because they're all the hype right now in the hobby. And I think the weeping willow, while they're not the most colorful, they kill the movement category. They're pretty easy to care for too. They can tolerate pretty suboptimal water parameters. Even dirtier water they'll be okay with, but obviously you want to keep it as pristine as possible. But they do take up a large space in the tank, so they take up a large space, they grow, they have coverage, and that might affect your other corals below it or around it. And they're also super sensitive, from what I've seen, to other corals. Like even Zooanthids or Rhodactis mushrooms, they're super sensitive. So this is the reason why I say they're more advanced, because you have to place them where they have enough space where they can, for one, not kill your corals, and for two, nothing else can sting them or bother them, because they'll shrivel up and you'll be like, what the hell, my weeping willow that's supposed to look like a glowing tree is just a little thing of flesh, and that's gonna suck. So definitely, this coral is definitely possible. It's 100% doable. Just you want to plan out where it's going to go and what you're going to put around it in the future. And that's really the main thing with these guys. Okay, and now for the most challenging soft coral. It is the non-photosynthetic Gorgonian. So non-photosynthetic Gorgonians come from the Caribbean and other parts of the world, but I know them in the Caribbean because we get them here in Florida, and they come in yellow and red, and they're strikingly beautiful in colors. They look like a little tree, and the advantages of them is that you can put them under a rock or in a place where you don't get as much light, because obviously they're non-photosynthetic, so they don't need that light to sustain them. They actually are filter feeders, so they have little white puffy polyps, which are also really awesome, and they just constantly filter microplankton, bacteria, dead particulates going through the water, and that's how they get their food. So yes, you will need to target feed them twice a day minimum, because they are constantly eating in the wild. So they're 24/7 eating when you think about it, and you're really just going to need to target feed them twice a day. There's no other way around it. You have to target feed them with microplankton, and if you don't, they're going to die. They're not going to live on light. Don't think that they will. Don't let anyone at a fish store tell you they will, because they won't. And yes, they're beautiful, but they will die. Now, you can get other species of Gorgonians that are photosynthetic and are beautiful. Now, their polyps aren't white and puffy. They're usually brown or dark purple, or kind of a weird purple brownish, but they have different advantages. So the ones from Florida, at least, are the ones that we actually get from a guy that we know who's a diver, commercial diver and collector, and he goes and collects them, and they're beautiful, and they're like kind of like big tree-like things, and they sway back and forth just like my camera is doing right now. And they are photosynthetic, and they do great, and they live a long time. So that's something I would recommend in place of the non-photosynthetic Gorgonians. Please don't buy this coral. They'll die. You're not going to target feed them twice a day. Even if you work at home, it's just going to end badly. You're not going to do it. Please don't do it. Thank you. Okay, so this is my water box, 25 Peninsula. As you can see, I have green star polyps. I got them up high. I'm going to try to make them grow up onto the back of this tank to kind of cover that ugly background like I talked about earlier. I have an arrow crab, which I personally do love. So not much about those guys. They're pretty simple. They don't live very long, but they do well for about a year or so. And I've seen them eat types of algae and other things like that. So they do pretty well. Now, this is the fish I cycled with. And I love these fish, but it's a Royal Grama from the Caribbean, from here. And this guy is beautiful. I don't have a name for him yet, so if you can think of a name for him, please leave it in the comments down below. But I absolutely love him, and I love that purple to yellow. It's super awesome, hard to find in the hobby, and they're pretty inexpensive. Now, I have some zoas right here, these orange zoas. Now, the camera's not quite picking up on their orange glow, but they have a very glowy orange, and when I eventually put a flow pump, a wave maker on here, then they're going to move around a little bit more. And I have a mushroom, a green mushroom. I believe this is a Rhodactis species. I'm not 100% sure, to be honest, but it's very slow growing. It's in low light. It kind of got moved around because I have a diamond watchman goby back there who, I don't know if you could see him, but I have this diamond watchman goby that is making a menace of my tank. He's completely built a burrow under here and here. Now, I know these guys can get big, so if he does get too big for the tank, I can easily take him out, put him in a client's tank, no problem. Now, I do have some toadstools over here. So, my toadstool and a weeping willow right there. So, as you can see, it kind of looks like it's a tree, which I find pretty amazing. So, they move beautifully in the water, and yeah, my arrow crab's kind of blocking them, but they're pretty amazing. Now, I do have a clam. I'll admit, I cracked. I saw them at the wholesaler. It's a Red Sea clam. These guys are freaking beautiful, and I just couldn't resist. Now, if he starts to do bad in here, I am going to put him in a client's tank or take him to our shop system, but so far he's opening up great. He has great coloration. Thing about clams is, you look from above the water, look at that color change. So, well, let me take my lid off here. Boom. He's light green, dark blue. Light green, dark blue. And I also have a little fire shrimp. They're beautifully red with white dots on them. And they don't clean off ick and disease and dead skin like cleaner shrimp do, but I find them to be very beautiful. Now, I also have a green chromis in here. I used him to cycle the tank. Probably not going to leave him in here too long since, you know, it's a pretty small tank, but he did the job to cycle the tank. And I have this one last green and orange Zooanthid colony right here. You can see a piece of it is already trying to jump off and jump on that rock. So yeah, that is my Waterbox 25 update. The Kessel light is doing wonders. I got this shade. I absolutely love it. Highly recommend, from Unreef. And yeah, I put a little bit of Cato back there. So it's kind of like a mini refugium. I think it's doing pretty well. I might have to add a light there later, but for right now, it's working pretty well. Staying pretty clean, and I'm super happy with it. Gonna do a water change this weekend, And yeah, maybe we'll make a video about, regular maintenance on a nano tank. I also got this really cool octopus sticker, so let's add this guy. Oh, I also have a temperature gauge on here, so the temperature probe, so 77 degrees. Right back there, oop, you can see it right under the return pump. And there's the actual body of it right there. So let's add this octopus, and that's it for the tank update. What's a reef tank without a little bit of pizzazz anyway? And boom. So yeah, leave a comment about what I should get next. I was thinking time to get some LPS corals, so maybe a frog spawn, maybe a hammer. I'm gonna save the torches and acros for later, but I was thinking that right here in this middle, this bridge I made is gonna be my acro guarded, and over here is gonna be my LPS. So I'm definitely gonna get a flow pump over there to kind of just blow the opposite direction as my return. And yeah, so comment below what you'd like to see in here. I'm getting a designer pair of clownfish as well, and I'm planning on putting a green carpet anemone in the front where that clam is. I might move him over to the other side right there. So a huge thank you to everyone who watched up until this point. Like and comment and subscribe if you enjoyed the video and thought I did a decent job this time. I got a new camera, so hopefully my video quality and audio quality is a little bit better. Also, leave it in a comment. What's your experience with soft corals? Which ones were the hardest for you to keep? Which ones lived? Which ones didn't? Which ones stung your LPS, your SPS, your other softies? Just tell me a story about your soft corals. But until the next one, keep testing your water, and Maverick out.